The next section of the Economed is diet. If you're a student like the three of us are, you might be familiar with the difficulties of making healthy dietary choices living on a college campus. It can be really hard having access to nutritious, balanced meals, or even just a kitchen where you can prepare meals. Um, but there are a couple of goals that the South Asian Heart Center really likes to help people set in terms of how people should plan their meals and think about their nutrition. So the first goal from the South Asian Heart Center is the 0, 1, 2, 12 rule. And it basically stands for 0 sugary drinks, 1 fist of fruit, 2 fists of vegetables, and 12 nuts per day. So for 0 sugary drinks, we'll talk more about sugary drinks in general later on, but for the fruit, it should be varied fruit, so different types of fruit. 2 fist vegetables, and these are more of like your green leafy vegetables, your non-starchy vegetables. So starchy vegetables would be like potatoes, peas, corn. So this is more talking about your green leafy vegetables. And then also 12 nuts, which is about like a handful. It'll give you the perfect amount of vitamins and nutrients without too much of the fat. So this is the 0, 1, 2, 12 rule. The next goal is the plate method, and you might have heard of the plate method before. It's a guideline set by the USDA, and it's a traditional like a 9-inch plate. So if you're looking at a plate, the guideline is that 1/2 of the plate should be non-starchy vegetables, 1/4 should be your grains, and they should be whole grains, and then 1/4 should be protein. So the diagram kind of shows how the plate method would look like on your traditional 9-inch plate. For vegetarians, that protein section might look a little different. So instead of meats, other things that would count for proteins are like lentils, beans, dal, as well tofu. So all of that would count under your protein. And then whole grains would be like having whole wheat toast instead of white bread, as well as brown rice instead of white rice, and different options to substitute more whole grains. Okay, so the plate method on the previous slide is kind of difficult to visualize for every single meal because usually meals are pretty much mixed with a bunch of different food groups all mixed on one plate. So these are just some pictures of how your plate method might look like for like different meals. And a lot of these meal options are great for vegans, vegetarians, whatever dietary restrictions you might have. But the whole goal is to sort of have double your vegetables than either your grains or your proteins. If your grain intake, for example, is more like 1-to-1 with your vegetables, the whole goal is that by increasing vegetables, over time your grains will start decreasing as you get full more easily with those vegetables. So that's kind of a great way to start incorporating the plate method. Maybe add one more serving of vegetables to either your lunch or dinner. So yeah, these are just some ideas for meals. Okay, so there are a couple of different things that the South Asian Heart Center says to avoid eating because they do make your blood cholesterol rise and contribute to the risk for heart disease and diabetes. So it's good to avoid eating a lot of red meat, palm and coconut oils, sugary food, which we'll talk about, as well as high sodium foods. And there are two nutrients that make your blood cholesterol rise. So this would be your saturated fats, which are mostly found in foods that come from animals, as well as trans fats, which are found in foods made with like hydrogenated oils and fats. But it's also important to note that not all fats are bad. So on the next slide, you'll see that there's actually a lot of fats, so monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats, that actually help lower your blood cholesterol levels. So a lot of these fats are recommended to people who are diabetic or have type 2 diabetes. And examples of these fats are avocados, corn, sunflower, soybean, olive oil, nuts and seeds, peanut butter, salmon and trout if you aren't vegetarian, and tofu. Peanut butter, it's a great snack to have with like a fruit. So like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter with like a fruit would be a great snack to add, and incorporating like avocados in any of your meals or in a snack. So yeah, it's good to focus. So avoid saturated and trans fats and focus more on monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats to help lower your blood cholesterol. Okay, so we've decided to talk a little bit about sugars and drinks because avoiding sugars and drinks is really important to help decrease the spikes in your blood sugar. So when sugars are dissolved in liquids, for example, like juices or even your tea or coffee with sugar or sweeteners, they cause your blood sugar to spike rapidly. Blood sugar spikes happen when your glucose basically builds up in your bloodstream. And if insulin is insufficient enough to control the glucose spikes, it could lead to a lot of long-term damage to your organs, your nerves, and your blood vessels. So artificial sweeteners is a controversial and highly debated upon topic because even though they're often advertised as healthy sounding, like for example, there's the sweetener called agave nectar. And it's very like branded and marketed as a healthy alternative to sugar. But it's also important to note that there are cons to artificial sweeteners. So long-term usage has been shown to be linked with diabetes and obesity, as well as when you have sweeteners in drinks, your brain still continues to perceive it as sweet, which leads to long-term harm. They also have been shown to harm the growth of your good bacteria in your gut microbiome, and they'll also affect your overall sugar tolerance. So currently there isn't enough research to give a definitive answer whether or not sweeteners will raise your blood sugar levels long term. But since it has been shown to have a link to like heart disease, diabetes, and negatively impacting your gut microbiome, it is important to be cautious about consuming artificial sweeteners as well. So another recommendation that the South Asian Heart Center has is to try adding sweeter spices instead to, for example, like your tea or coffee. So cinnamon, nutmeg, cardamom, those are some examples of sweeter spices you could try adding instead of sugar. So these are some discussion questions for the diet section. So the first one is, has it been easier or harder to follow a healthy meal plan during quarantine, and why? And then if you are a student, so for anyone who has moved back home from living on campus or has moved back to campus recently, what changes have you noticed in your diet? So basically, how has this period of quarantine affected your diet and your meal plan? So again, you can answer this in chat, and we'll give a few minutes for people to answer if you'd like. Yeah, I see in the chat. So buying fresh fruits and vegetables from the store and eating mindfully is definitely a great way. Also, like incorporating the plate method, even meal prepping in the beginning of the week. And that would also definitely help like incorporate healthy lifestyle choices. Yeah, and I'm seeing it's harder for some people and easier for others. Definitely during this time, it can be hard to follow a meal plan that's consistent throughout the week. Okay, and then just really quickly, so I see a question about coconut oil. So coconut oil has, it is actually linked to heart disease. I think it's about like 80% saturated fats. The most recommended type of oil for like medium cooking is olive oil, which is also like drizzled like on top of salads and different things. So we do recommend olive oil for general use. And yeah, saturated coconut oil, it's, I think in India, sometimes you can find it as a liquid form. Over here, it's more in the solid form, but it does have high saturated fats. So there is some controversy about coconut oil consumption, but it is important to know that it's high in saturated fats. And then there's a lot of different apps I'm seeing in the chat, which is great. Yeah. Avocado oil is great for really like high heat cooking. So it's best for like if you're frying occasionally or high heat cooking, but olive oil is definitely the best choice for general use.